When Usher Raymond entered the courtroom on day 9 of Sean Diddy Combs' trial, murmurs swept through the packed gallery. Many thought he was there to provide background character testimony or clarify minor industry contexts. But what he had in store was something entirely different, calculated, unexpected intervention that would drastically change the trial's trajectory. Although Usher was initially not listed as a key witness for the prosecution, a last-minute legal motion saw him subpoenaed after a sealed video. Please note that the following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. His first words on the stand were straightforward but chilling. As a child, I thought I was learning about the business, but now I know I was being introduced to something else. The courtroom fell silent as Usher quietly turned over a recording he had been keeping secret for years, uncertain whether releasing it would cause more harm than good. The man he once called a mentor had long since changed into someone he feared and no longer recognized. He spoke with a grim calmness instead of anger, as if he had finally lifted a burden he had carried for decades. What followed was a horrific account of his early years under Diddy's care, including how he was sent to stay at his mansion at the age of 13 under the supervision of music industry elders who trusted Diddy to mentor him. He recalled the atmosphere, the late-night parties, the strange visitors, and the sense that the house had no boundaries. He claimed that it was a grooming ground, not just music, and he testified about waking up in rooms he couldn't remember sleeping in, about security guards who ignored him, and about being told to keep secrets if he wanted to survive in the industry. Usher explained that his first involvement with Diddy began in the early 1990s, when he was just starting to break into the industry. His mother, desperate for a stable foundation for her talented son, thought Diddy could help him navigate the murky waters of showbiz. Usher said she thought he could protect me, that he knew how to build stars. I don't think she ever imagined what he was actually exposing me to. As reporters scrawled frantically and prosecutors leaned forward in their seats, Usher paused and said, "I have something to show you. I didn't want to, but I can't keep this hidden anymore." Usher told the court about sleepless nights and strange rules, describing camp sessions as late-night adult parties masquerading as mentorship retreats. Young artists were not permitted to leave their rooms after specific hours, and they frequently heard noises they couldn't explain, such as screams, laughter, or loud music followed by sobbing. One evening, he was told to enter the green room, where Diddy was entertaining guests. There were girls in there, he said, but they didn't look like they were having fun. They looked scared. Usher claimed he was told to sit down, observe, and learn. Usher's testimony revealed that he had begun secretly recording his experiences. It wasn't safe to speak out, so I did the only thing I could do. I recorded things. He started cataloging specific events, dates, and behaviors. And at the heart of it all, he claimed, was Diddy, a man who presented himself to the federal investigators. The details he shared weren't just shocking because of what he saw, but also because of who else was present. Several prominent industry names frequented the mansion during those years, some of whom are now billionaires and household names. The courtroom held its breath as Usher explained the video, which was provided to him by a former house staffer who had worked security at one of Diddy's private estates in the early 2000s. This footage was not meant to be seen, Usher said, adding that it was taken by someone who might disappear if it ever got out. The video, which had been verified by digital forensic experts earlier in the week, was played behind closed doors in a restricted courtroom session, but Usher meticulously explained its contents to the jury, sitting with several men and a woman in a private room with red lighting. Usher explained that he had received this tape anonymously 5 years ago, but didn't know what to do with it. "I was afraid," he said, for the woman in the video, afraid for what it meant. Afraid that if I said anything, I'd end up in the same situation as others who appear visibly intoxicated or unconscious. The woman is partially undressed and unresponsive, and Diddy can be heard laughing, giving instructions, and at one point slapping the woman lightly and saying, "Wake up, you still have work to do." Usher's words weren't just strong, They were supported by visual evidence. Diddy's attorneys repeatedly objected as he spoke, but the judge allowed the testimony to continue, citing its relevance to establishing a pattern of behavior. Later that afternoon, news of the video leaked to press outlets and the story exploded across headlines. The Diddy trial had already been controversial, but now it had become radioactive, and Usher, once the prodigy shaped by Diddy himself, became the witness no one could silence. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as a screen was wheeled in. The judge approved the footage's entry into evidence with a heavy sigh, clearly aware of the seriousness of what was about to happen. The courtroom fell silent as Usher, steady but obviously emotional, pointed to the USB drive he had submitted. "This is the video I've been holding on to for over a decade," he said. The video started playing. The clip, which was about 5 minutes long, was recorded with what appeared to be a hidden camera. It was shaky with poor lighting, but it was unmistakably clear in audio. The setting was a luxurious penthouse apartment. Diddy's voice could be heard loud and confident as he addressed a group of young artists and assistants who were seated nervously in front of him. Diddy was shirtless and pacing as he explained in detail how the industry operates, outlining a system of favors, expectations, and consequences. Then his tone changed. Diddy started outlining rituals that didn't sound like they came from a recording studio. 1 minute he was discussing sacrifice and loyalty, and the next he was talking about cleaning up problems and erasing those who spoke out. "And your whole family suffers. Ask around." They know Diddy's voice could be heard saying. The camera caught one young man in the corner, visibly shaking. The next sentence made everyone watching shiver. "Ask Cassie what happens when you roometh. R-M-O-U Usher.K. Usher," he flinched. Lynched Usher stepped back from the monitor, wiping a tear from his cheek. That tape spoke volumes. What had been rumors and conjecture was now proof. As the recording came to an end, the courtroom was visibly shaken. A few jurors wiped away their tears. Reporters had to be warned not to live tweet. Diddy's legal team requested an immediate recess, arguing that the footage was out of context and deeply prejudicial. The judge denied the request. The damage had Diddy sat frozen, his eyes fixed on the floor, his jaw clenched. For the first time since the trial began, he looked like a man who knew he might not walk free. Usher testified that the video was taken during a mentor weekend in 2012, where young male artists were invited to what was described as a bonding retreat. The defense rushed to claim the video was fake, but a forensic expert was already scheduled to testify that the footage was real and unaltered. Even worse for the defense, several of the individuals in the video had already been named in other lawsuits against Diddy that had previously been sealed but were still being investigated. Once more, the prosecution had more than just testimony. They had a recording that captured the tone, the threats, and the manipulation. It had recently been refilled. One anonymous witness, allegedly from the video, contacted prosecutors that same afternoon asking to testify. The floodgate opening the courtroom recessed for the day. But the air buzzed with energy. Is was no longer a cast case off Gatti's reckoning. Reckoning or TERS gathered outside. One of them shouted, "Is this Diddy's downfall?" A murmur ran through the crowd and everyone Ken's Worknerser. Within 24 hours of the footage going public, despite the judge's gag order, leaks had already gone online. The music industry's response was divided. Several artists themselves. Drake unfollowed Diddy on social media. Beyoncé's team issued a "the public was watching." Streaming services started removing some of Diddy's catalog for review, and sponsors associated with his business empire started terminating partnerships. Revolt TV's board called an emergency meeting, and the king of Bad Boy Records was now radioactive. However, the biggest shock came when Quincy Jones made a statement. "There is a sickness in the industry that we've ignored for long. If what I have seen and heard is real, it's time to burn it down and rebuild. Quincy, an elder godfather in the industry, made a statement that was revolutionary. It wasn't just about Diddy. Usher was being hailed as a hero in the meantime. Not because he was flawless, but because he had dared to break ranks. I knew I'd lose people I considered family, he told the press, but the truth has to matter more. Yet Usher was not without fear. He had beefed up his personal security. Rumors circulated that other artists were getting ready to speak out. Inspired by the tape, and one producer close to Diddy allegedly fled the country. The courtroom was set to resume the following morning. And everyone knew the cross-examination would be harsh, but the conversation had changed. The courtroom was still bustling the following morning, but Usher's revelation on the stand stopped everything. With a heavy voice and lowered eyes, Usher turned to the jury and said, "There's something I've never admitted publicly, and I've carried the weight of it for years. Yes, I gave him just reporter's voice or so's mid-keystroke. I introduced Justin Bieber to Diddy, 'cause I thought I was opening a door for Kid ID," Usher continued. "But I was setting him up for something I didn't fully understand back in 2008. Usher, who once referred to Justin as his little brother, thought that involving Diddy would only elevate the young star. However, in court, Usher's tone made it clear that this wasn't about elevation. Rather, it was about regret. I watched as the same cycle began repeating with him, and Usher said the same parties, the satraps, P.S. And I thought maybe Diddy's just trying to guide him. But then I saw the signs: tension, exhaustion, and Farrand." Usher paused, his eyes red. "I can still remember the exact moment I felt sick about it. Justin was 15 when he returned." Usher claimed that after Bieber's popularity skyrocketed, Diddy started trying to remove him from the equation entirely. It became unnecessary, he explained. "'Cause I had already survived it once, and because speaking out back then meant disappearing. You think we don't notice who vanishes in this industry?" he said. "It's different." He then went to his room and locked the door. I never forgot that the courtroom was still in a world where secrets are currency. This confession was priceless and potentially damning. And then came the most haunting line. "I wasn't just replaced by Justin, but I was the offering." Justin Bieber wasn't in court, but his name was all over testimony in sealed documents. And now in whispers, Usher's remarks caused a quiet outcry online. Fans demanded answers, and within hours, the question, "What did Justin see?" went viral. However, sources close to the trial revealed that Bieber might have seen more than anyone realized, and he might have been intimidated into silence. Prosecutors cited an unsealed 2015 deposition from an unrelated civil case, where McDore was the document had been heavily redacted until now. But one question stood out. Were you ever in situations that made you feel unsafe while under Mr. Combs' supervision? Bieber's lawyer objected. But Bieber's response was already recorded, so I don't want to talk about that. When pressed, he added, "They said I'd be sued, that I'd lose everything, and there's stuff on tape that they could use." Usher testified that Bieber had called him after a party that Diddy had hosted in Miami, claiming that there were cameras everywhere, rooms they weren't allowed to enter, and people showing up that he had never met before, including grown men who weren't even in the music industry. However, the most damning evidence may have originated from a private text exchange between Bieber and an unidentified producer from Diddy's circle. In the message, the producer said, "You weren't supposed to remember what you saw. Too bad you left early." When the prosecutors showed the message in court, Usher was asked again why he brought Justin to Diddy. "I thought I was giving him the world," he whispered, "and I didn't know I was handing him to a predator." The public is now demanding a statement from Justin Bieber. But those close to the singer say he's terrified and may have been silenced for years due to NDA agreements. "And we all failed him," Usher stated plainly. The courtroom isn't in his last moments on the stand. Usher addressed the judge directly, saying, "This industry has blood on its hands. Eddie's, Michael, Whitney, Prince, Cassie, and maybe Justin too. We keep pretending drugs, dress, tress, fame, or ST, but me. .tme, but behind all of it are fear, control, and exploitation. You'med me, me, and you shemid me, and for what? T-power, money, a legacy built on silence and fear. Longer felt like a trial, a final exorcism of 10 years worth of buried trauma. Secrets and betrayals. And at the center of it all sat Shah Didcoms, still silently unraveling. In the days that followed, subpoenas were reportedly issued. For other people who had been involved in Bieber's early career, it is unclear if Justin will take the stand, but Usher's testimony ripped a hole in the facade. He had not only exposed Diddy, he had exposed the entire machine. As the court adjourned, for the day, the crowd outside exploded with cameras and reporters. What had started as a case about Cassie's abuse allegations had now turned into a monstrous web of celebrity exploitation, psychological warfare, and generational pain. It Hadida Donder just buried it. More tapes, testimonies, and survivors would follow, but it all began with a single act of bravery. When Usher finally stopped shielding the system that had once attempted to destroy him. Following Usher's devastating final testimony, the media storm turned into a full-scale explosion. Headlines screamed Usher, Diddy, and Clive Davis in the grooming web. And think pieces broke down every detail of the testimony and its implications for the music industry as a whole. However, the most startling development wasn't what Usher said, but rather who came forward afterwards. Two more former Bad Boy Records artists contacted the prosecution within 48 hours. Their identities were not made public right away, but insiders informed us that they were both male artists who had worked closely with Diddy in the early 2000s and had long since faded from the public eye. One of them had reportedly gone completely off the radar, while the other was rumored to be struggling with addiction and had spent years in and out of rehab, according to court transcripts that were leaked. The new witnesses confirmed Usher's timeline, not only about Justin Bieber, but also about the private parties, the handlers, the surveillance, and the rituals that had long been rumored but never confirmed. One witness reportedly stated, "He didn't just throughs. He tested your limits. And if he made sure you broke, but you didn't." This was uncomfortably consistent with videos that was recently reposted on social media, showing a 15-year-old Justin Bieber standing next to Diddy, looking obviously uneasy as Diddy brags, "You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be hanging out with him for 48 hours. We're going to do some grown men stuff." A hairstylist who had collaborated with Bieber during the My World era anonymously told a major outlet about her experience, claiming that Bieber would return on several occasions. The clip, which had previously been written off as awkward humor, was now being examined frame by frame as proof of something more sinister. Diddy told her, "I feel like I'm not real anymore, like I'm someone else when I'm with him," after she had been visibly terrified and silent during meetings with him, frequently refusing to speak to anyone for hours. One anonymous record executive told Rolling Stone he broke an unspoken oath. We all knew. All stayed quiet. And now the whole house is on fire. Other celebrities responded with cautious support, including Tyrese Gibson and Tamar Braxton. Jaguar, right? Who posted cryptic messages on Instagram stories suggesting they'd seen similar things but were too afraid to speak about Chris Brown. At the time, she believed it was teen angst, but now she wonders if it was trauma. Kanye West, who had already taken the stand earlier in the week, doubled down in a surprise live stream the following night. Wearing a black hoodie and displaying no emotion, Kanye said, "I told you didn't listen. They came for Mike. They came for Whitney, and they came for me. You think Diddy acts alone? Diddy's a foot soldier. This whole thing goes deeper than you can imagine." Usher just cracked the first layer, but if you keep digging, you'll find the devil sitting on a throne smiling. Although there was no formal investigation into Diddy beyond the current civil and criminal charges, Insiders say the federal government is closely monitoring and could step in if trafficking or coercion can be proven across state lines. However, there was a final twist. A sealed document from 2017 was leaked to a major outlet, revealing that Usher had attempted to approach law enforcement once before. While some dismissed Kanye's words as conspiracy-laced rambling, others couldn't ignore the uncanny alignment of his claims with the events taking place in court. The Department of Justice reportedly contacted Usher's legal team to discuss his testimony and the evidence submitted. Usher's decision to release the secret video testimonies about Justin and implicate the machine behind Diddy's empire did more than shock a courtroom. It broke a pact of silence that had held for decades and gave courage to the voiceless. The narrative had changed, and Diddy was no longer just on trial for what happened with Cassie. He was now the face of something darker that had been operating in the shadows for far too long. The complaint, which described potential grooming and coercive behavior targeting minors within Diddy's circle, was disregarded, and the officer who filed it later left the department. The shadows were now yelling.